At one point, my hometown was called the shoelace capital of the world. It was a world leader in the manufacturing of shoes, too. My grandfather used to work in one of those factories. It was a 6-story building that back in the day buzzed with activity. The place employed hundreds of men, sometimes working multiple shifts to meet demand. But by the 1950s, sales began to decline. And by the 70s, with foreign competition cutting into their margin, it was pretty much the end of the industry in my hometown and left a lot of men without jobs. It was a desperate time for a lot of people as the factory lay mostly dormant. When I was a kid, I used to hang out at a little mom and pop grocery store just a block away from the factory. I knew the owner and he'd been there for over 40 years. He told me the story about 2 executives who managed the factory. They were heavily invested in the business and had a lot of stock in it. When the business went belly up, they lost everything. The older 2 brothers started drinking and went into a deep depression. His office was on the 5th floor, and one night, he went out the window. They found his body the next morning, and when his brother found out, he killed himself later in the day by laying on the train tracks next to the building. The old grocery store owner said on his way into work that day, he discovered the body, and he said it was a gruesome scene. He also said that the brothers haunted the area around the factory at night. And that's why he closed up his store every day before nightfall. Of course, I thought he was trying to pull one over on me. So that night, me and my friends went down to the factory to check the place out, to prove that we weren't afraid of any ghosts. Being secretive, we went around the building looking for any way to get in and found the place locked up tight. As we walked away, we heard a bone-chilling scream. It came from above us. And it seemed to be falling directly down on us. I heard the noise that sounded like a body hitting the ground. But when I looked, there was nothing there. We ran away from the building toward the railroad tracks to the north. And that's when I saw someone crawling down the tracks toward us. The figure emitted a moaning sound as it pulled itself along. That's all we needed to see. We took off running and headed north as fast as our feet could carry us. We never went down to that area of town after dark ever again.
When I was in high school, I spent a lot of time at our local library, studying, researching information for papers, and generally goofing off with my friends. It was a gorgeous Carnegie-funded library, and I hung out there on many weeknights, even when I didn't have to. I mean, who really wants to hang out with their parents? It was so much more fun to hang out with my friends, even at the library. Besides, I was a bit of a book nerd. But it wasn't always fun and games. Strange and unexplainable things happened there. There were times when I would be studying back in the library stacks when the temperature would suddenly drop. And I'm talking about 15 to 20 degree temperature drops. Sometimes I could even see my own breath because it was so cold. At other times, the lights would flicker on and off for no reason. When I spoke with a librarian, they had no answers, or at least ones they wanted to readily talk about at that point. Their maintenance people had looked into both issues, but there was no logical explanation for what was happening. One time, I was working alone at one of the desks, and I heard something. When I looked up, I saw a man dressed in shabby clothing. He was sitting against the back wall of the library, just sort of laying there. It was funny because he hadn't been there when I got there, and I didn't see him come in, but I had been studying. He was mumbling to himself and making little noises.
Get some tea around here. It's so cold.
I heard a noise off to my left that distracted me, and when I looked back, the man was gone. It was totally freaky because I was nearly 100% positive that I would have seen him leave. Things only got stranger after that. Another night, I was there when I saw a woman at the end of a row of books. She wore a long dress that was years out of style. She was shrouded in shadows, so I couldn't see her face. I thought it was weird that she just stood there staring at me. It wasn't a glance either. She must have stood there for 2 minutes just looking at me. But then she started moving toward me. All the while, the temperature dropped around me and the lights started to flicker. Between the cold and the spooky woman, my arms broke out in goosebumps, but she just kept coming at me. I was literally paralyzed with fear, and my heart was beating so hard that I felt like it might burst out of my chest. But suddenly, just before she got to me, she disappeared, evaporating like mist. Once I pulled myself back together, I got out of there. The next day when I came back, I told the librarian about it, and she finally divulged that a homeless man used to come into the library and hide back in among the books to keep warm. Anyway, he had a heart attack and died back there. Some patrons reported that they saw a disheveled man back there walking around or resting in the stacks, but only at night. She wouldn't come right out and say that he was a ghost, but reading between the lines, there was no other explanation. As for the woman, there was a story about a librarian from back in the 1950s who fell from the balcony when she was cleaning one of the granite posts. She broke her neck and died. Some of the patrons said that they saw her walking among the stacks from time to time. There were a lot of stories over the years of sightings of both of these entities. For my part, I steered away from being alone at the library from then on out.
As a kid, I had free range over my hometown. This was the days before helicopter parents and well before cell phones. When I left the house with my friends, I was out of pocket, and my parents had no idea where I was and what I was doing. Down in the south end of my town, there are 2 bridges. One spanned the Ohio River, and the other led to the west side of our city. My friends and I were both adventurous and curious. So when we heard the story of a ghost haunting the south side of the town on those bridges, of course, we had to check it out. After telling our parents we wouldn't be home because we were working on play practice at high school, we decided to sneak down to the bridge to see if this was real or not. Most of our group was skeptical, but it was a reason to hang out at night and wander the town, so what the heck. We staked out the bridge and waited. For the longest time, we only saw cars passing over the bridge. We had a huge false alarm when someone walked over the bridge from the west side. It was getting late, and while we had free range, we did have curfews. We were just about to pack it in when one of my friends said, "Holy crap, there she is." When I looked at the bridge, I saw a form coming towards us across it. After a few seconds, the form became clear. It was a woman, and she was wearing all white. It looked like she was wearing a gown, and she had her arms out as if she was beckoning us to come to her. At least, that's what I saw. Looking at her was almost a hypnotic experience. I thought I heard a voice, but it could have been in my head. There were no distinct words, but more of a feeling, like someone was talking to me in a soft, comforting voice.
Come to me, come to me.
I felt a wave of dizziness come over me, but I also felt like I needed to go to the woman. I even took a step toward her, but one of my friends grabbed my arm and asked me what the hell I was doing. Anyway, I snapped out of it and stopped walking, and the woman disappeared, almost like she evaporated. Needless to say, we nearly crapped our pants, but figured no one would ever believe us. The evening came to a quick halt when the police discovered us hanging out way past when we should be home. We disbanded, but we came down that weekend and we met with one of the old people who lived down there. She said that there was a woman named Mary Fisk who had been killed in a cabin at a place in our town called Alexandria Point, which was where the 2 rivers converged. Mary Fisk was said to haunt the area around the bridge. and more than one man had ended up taking a dunk in the river when they were wooed by her. It was even said that one man had even drowned, but we couldn't confirm that. Despite how creepy it was, every chance we could, we went to the bridge to see if she would reappear, but she never did. At least not for us.
Come to me.